session on, it was the black church versus biblical truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of times, you to me, you come across as though, you know, you're giving one side of the story and not like the whole perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you believe that the Western church, air quotes, white church, Western church, has anything to do with the condition of the quote black church, end quote?
I
And
think
liberal theology and
I
all
see
of
what you're
that.
saying. I think that the white church bears maybe some guilt in some of the things that were done to the black Christians, and you'll see where I'm going in a second. But also, the white church also bears some thanks for liberating. And hell, we would still be enslaved if it weren't for some whites, right? The abolitionist movement was a Christian movement. But when I say the white church who bears responsibility, which of them are alive? Which one bears that responsibility? Who do we go to and say, you yourself, sir, are the ones that are indebted to me because of what you've done? The place that we find ourselves is not because of where we were 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. No, where we find ourselves, the state of the black Christian, the black church today. And I know we shouldn't be talking about a black church or white church, Hispanic church, but we know what we mean. The condition that we find ourselves in, by and large, is a condition of our own making. So where we see sometimes the foolishness that we see in some of our, I mean, let's be honest. When we look at some of these video clips of what's happening, how often is it us? When we see some of the things, now I'm not saying that white folks and Hispanic folks and Asian folks don't do crazy. They do. They do. They are just as we say, throw it off as we are. But we can't hold someone else accountable for what we are responsible for ourselves. And so in what way do you think that they are responsible? So I'll go back and give it to you. What way do you think that white folks or the white church is responsible?
Well, the way that I look at it, Corey, is that um, through slavery and Jim Crow and all those things and segregation, it created an atmosphere where you know the black church obviously feeling separate and left out of the religious the authoritative religious group, as well as in society in many ways, um, kind of gave room for the preachers to have that sort of mindset where, if I'm preaching to a people that I'm trying to serve God and give them the word, I'm going to, by definition, speak to many of the social ills as well. Not like in a liberation theology way, but I
Mm-hmm.
am going to speak to those kinds of situations that we have in common, that we're going through. And it just seems to me that that's a disservice to overlook that. It is something that is pervasive today.
But
Yes,
should
we are
is it the same as?
responsible.
But would you say there's a difference between overlooking and highlighting?
Well, if you overlook it, if you're not highlighting it, it just seems as though you're overlooking
So if I
it.
don't, but in the Bible, there are people that have gone through a great many things, right? And that
Sure.
can be a testimony, but to sit and stay on that. Okay, so what should the white church do, or what should we not do? What should we not be responsible to do because of the past? What standard would we say is lower because of what happened in the past?
What standard is lower?
Yeah, such as fathers being home with your children, marrying the mother of your child,
Well,
not getting in trouble, those sort of things.
when you mention things like that, fathers being home with your children, those are systemic issues in the black community. But it's the black men are and Spanish men are the most involved in their children's lives than
How?
any other ethnic group.
I saw that report.
They may not be in the home, but they're
Okay.
most involved.
But here's the question, and I saw that report, and the first thing that stuck out to me, first of all, it was a survey. There's no way to actually go and measure that. There's no way. But let me ask you a question. If I've got two children, I got two children, 8 hours. I mean, 24 hours a day. I've got to work 8 hours. I've got to take care of myself, sleep and eat and so forth. So how much time do I have each day, assuming I'm going to see them every day, with each one of those children? Because it's just something different about the father being literally in the home. My daughter is right; she's on the other side of this wall. There's only so much she
Hmm.
can do. I can, and she might want to close her door, but I can walk by. I'll open that door because daddy's home. It's a difference between daddy being at home versus I can call my daddy. It's a huge difference. And we know that boys get in trouble, especially boys and girls, true. When daddy's not there, things happen. Think about what the stats say. These are the stats that we can't. So someone saying they're more involved with their child, the stats bear out that the father who's at home, and that's taking into account, we don't know what sort of father he is, whether he's a deadbeat dad, whether he's watching the game all day, drink, who knows. But the stats bear it out. If the father is at home, that child is more than likely going to go to school, one, graduate, not go to jail, not get on drugs, not become a homosexual, not get
Sure,
pregnant, those things. And
sure,
so just by being home,
sure. I agree. But to be home, you have to have an agreement with the wife, and I think it's
don't sleep with her before then though. That's all. Don't get her pregnant.
well. First of
White man did
all,
not pull your pants.
hold on,
Go ahead,
hold,
go
hold
ahead,
on.
go ahead.
M- Men do not have sex with women against their wishes. So you can't put that on men. You
What do
put
you
that
mean?
on women.
Yeah, no, I put it on. I
Wo-
put it on men.
Women, you can't have sex with a woman unless she gives consent.
Oh, no. My point though, in most relationships, now I know things might be changing, whatever, but who do you think is probably leading this? In many cases, probably the man. But the point is, guess what? Who does God hold you responsible? Since we're talking about the church, we're talking about black men who are Christians. Who is God going to hold the most responsible for? And so she didn't grab you, just like she didn't make, or just like someone didn't grab you, make you have sex with that woman. I get it. It's a man and a woman. Both of them have to be mature and not do these foolish things. I'm not harping against someone. We've all messed up or whatever, but that's not someone else's fault or responsibility. Just like it's nobody that caused this man to have another child. So because most people, a lot of men, most men have more than one child.
It
So
still seems
now,
black on a black man or a man, period, when women cannot get pregnant unless they give consent. So
why?
how is this
But
man's
the same dynamics, the same biology is there in the white home with white people. The same dynamics with Hispanics. But here's the kicker: the same dynamics with blacks from the Caribbean or from Africa. They look just as black, in many cases darker, with the cultural and language barrier in some cases, and they're not getting a bunch of kids out of having a bunch of kids out of wedlock. So the issue is a cultural thing, how we just refuse in many cases to take responsibility. We at some point in time we got to say, you know what? Even if all the white people in America are against us, even if that were the case, can we do something about ourselves? And we got a God who can certainly empower us to do so.
now in blackdemographics.com? Are you familiar with that?
No.
Blackdemographics.com, they said 51% of marriage aged men are single and childless. 51%.
Of
20,
marriage aged men.
yes, 20, but 20% to 25% of black men are married.
Okay.
So you're looking at 51, 25, and then you have also like gay men and incarcerated men and all of that. So what you're really looking at is about 8 to 12% of the men who are responsible for having children out of
Now,
wedlock.
outside of that study that you heard, do you think that study is true?
It's blackdemographics.com. You can check it out and let me
I
know.
don't care who it is, but do you think that only 8% or 10% of all those are? 8 to 10% of the black men are responsible for all these. Remember, 72% of all kids born are born out of wedlock, and that's because of 8 to 10% of the
I've
black
seen
men.
one guy have 12, 15 children out
Man,
of
that
wedlock.
that that brother, listen, he's doing it,
Have
ain't it?
you not,
He's
have
putting in
you not seen
work, huh?
that before? Have you not seen that before? Have you not
I
heard of
have
that?
seen that. I have seen that. But here's the point though. Here's my point. And someone will say, "Well, Corey, you too hard on black folks sometimes, or too hard on men." Yep, yep, for a good reason. If you're going to, if you are going to look for someone else to blame or to bail you out, you will go absolutely nowhere. Think about it. Think about this question: where are
Okay.
we in every social economic metric? Where are we? We are at the bottom rung. Why?
Why? Because of us? Because of what we do?
Yes.
So it has nothing to do with any kind of systemic racism, any kind of background from not teaching our children to read, not putting an emphasis on education for generations.
Who didn't
None of
teach
that.
your not
No,
you? Because I'm
I,
pretty sure you taught your children. But
yeah.
who didn't? But let's say you're that person. Let's say you're Clyde the bum, and you got two kids. Clyde, who didn't teach your kids to read? The white man or you?
Well, Corey, you do understand that education is something that if your grandparents were educated, their children were educated, their children's children were educated,
But here's the
or they
problem, though.
fell along the
Well,
wayside.
hold on,
But
Hunter. Here's the problem. Here's the problem.
from when you come from a family that does not understand credit, never understood credit,
I
it is
get you.
very it is very likely that that child out of that household will also not
But
understand
listen,
credit.
two things. Two things. They've always said that education is the great equalizer, right?
I like that phrase. I don't know if it's 100% true, but
Well,
I'm in
it was it
50.
was it was the mantra of the black community in the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Yes,
Why
and it
was
was
that? Why
exactly.
was that? Why did black folks want to make sure that they had a way to educate their children? Whether it was with white folks or black folks, they
It
wanted to
was
educate
better.
their children.
It was better.
Because, well, let me tell you what happened. They knew that kids that graduate high school had a far more likelihood to be successful socially, economically, right? Something changed though. In the
Yes,
in the 50s and 60s, we started seeing the education of black kids tail off. Well, what happened? I'll tell you what happened. The one thing that's more important than education: fathers being at home. The reason why blacks were getting educated, why we saw black improvement in the teens, the 20s, the 30s, and 40s, up to the 1950s, is because we had black fathers at home. Even
and
in
we
the most racist situation. Was it
okay,
more racist in the 40s than it is in 2025? Sure it is.
and we
So
were doing better,
if they didn't have an excuse, why do we?
and
What
we were doing
opportunity
better.
what
I I
opportunity, Hunter, are we close out of?
I agree with you, but what could have caused black homes to be broken up in the 50s or 60s?
Somebody giving us an excuse and telling us we can hang on that excuse? Somebody wanting to help us?
Yes, a check,
Yep.
a check.
And why do we take the
And
check?
why did they take the check?
Why do we take
Why did the wives and the girlfriends take the check?
Yeah, why?
Because they valued the check more than they did their husband or their man.
Now, the man who gets her pregnant didn't have to get her pregnant so that she can get a check.
That wasn't the case. That wasn't the point of it. Wasn't that wasn't the impetus
The ch-
to get pregnant was to get a check.
well, hold
The
on.
checks weren't
But the
even
check
coming.
did the check didn't
Checks
come.
weren't
The
coming.
checks weren't flowing to married households.
No, but they weren't coming at that time, and men were in households that they weren't married.
But if we go to
But
the
when
60s, when we started seeing these checks for social for some sort of welfare, when we started seeing them
mm,
come in, men were you're not giving a check to someone who is somebody's burning something. You're not giving a check to someone who is married. They're already not married. Why are you not married with this child?
I understand,
So
that
my
that's
don't you
still
let me ask a question. I think that you
mm,
believe that black folks have the ability to succeed under any
abs-
circumstance.
absolutely.
Well, then why not just hold us to that standard that we know we can reach it? If they could do it in the 30s, the 40s, and 50s, why can't we do it in 2025? We've got just as much access to technology.
Well,
We
we
can
are
fix
doing
our credit. we can actually grow, make a business, grow income, raise our. We can do all those things because if black folks from Nigeria or from the Congo or Tanzania comes here, or from
Hmm.
Tahiti, I'm sorry, Tahiti, Trinidad and Tobago, if they can come
Uh-huh.
here and outperform us in 10 to 15 years, we really don't have an excuse. We just
We
don't.
do. We really do.
Okay.
Because you say, first of all, those people did not go through what the African American people group did.
But when they get here, what are they going through?
Those people come, no, no, no. When those people come here, they have a culture and a cultural dynamic underpinning them
You mean the mentality?
that that girds them against just this plain old capitalism and
But would you, Hunter, would you
libertarian.
call that a mentality?
Say again.
Would you call that culture, that way they look at things, would you call that a mentality? They have a certain mentality?
Yes, that was given to them through their culture.
What's that, and what is that mentality? Describe that mentality.
They have family. They have, this varies from different culture to culture, but there's a cohesiveness.
But don't we
Like
have
people,
family?
huh?
Don't we have family here?
But what is our culture?
You mean what is our
African American.
mentality?
What is our what? Where do we get that mentality from? What we don't have
That,
African. If
but
you
therein
if
lies,
you
that's my point though. Change the mentality, and the
but
mentality will not change if we say, "Look what Whitey did. Look at the government."
so
And
how do you
or look at this other
identify?
black man over there doing something. The mentality will not change unless we won't do. If we don't change that, we'll stay right where we are. We'll be, you and I will be having the same conversation in 30 years.
All right, Corey. The only thing that can save or change the mentality of African American community is that if they embrace Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only thing, because that's the only thing that can replace a cultural self identity. African Americans have a cultural self identity of individualism and capitalism. I call it
So
stack my paper high and me, myself, and I.
so let me say this. Let me say this because I need to go to the next person. But I would say this: if a person wants to, because it's going to start individually. No one black person is going to save the black community. No one black person is going to fix the black church. You fix yourself. Like you're on an airplane. They'll tell you when the masks drop, get your oxygen first, and then if you got a child, give it to them. Right? Don't give it to the child first. Don't give it to your neighbor first because you'll die. So what you do is take care of Hunter and his wife and his children, and then foster an identity that other folks can look at you and see, you know what, that's a black man with his black wife, or with his wife. She ain't gotta be black. My
Right.
my 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 grandson went to the hospital. I told you about this a few months ago in the ambulance, and the nurses and the EMT, they were just falling all over him. And then one of the paramedics said to them, a black one, no, two of them, they were black, and they said, "Man, it's just so good to see." To my son-in-law, it's just so good to see a black man in the ambulance with his black son, with his black wife. They said we don't usually see that. And the striking thing is guess what? Back at home, there's another black man with his black wife, with his black kids, and his father, my son-in-law's father, is at home with his black wife and their black children. In other words, there is an identity already embedded here with our family and with his family, and now with their family and their children's family. This stuff is contagious.
But Corey, I agree with you on that, but we've been doing that ever since we received emancipation. We have doctors, lawyers, teachers, astronauts, politicians,
Mm-hmm.
a president. We have been doing that, but we still that's still not a resolution to the issues.
And you're
And it's,
so before we go, what is your suggestion? What do we do?
well, all I would like to do is, well, from you, I would just like to see either equal time or equal bashing, or whatever you want to
Who
put
am
it.
I going to bash?
Well, well, pointing out all of the different flaws and failings, and I think that the church, Christians in African American churches,
Mhm.
um, many of them are heinous, but there are many great
There are.
churches that air quotes black,
Mhm.
and just because we have to say black or the white, even that in and of itself is a significant uh, marker of the problem.
You want me to go out there and start bashing these good white folks? That what you want me to do?
No, no, just the bad ones, just the ones
Just the
that
bad ones.
dance with snakes and stuff like that. I want you to put some of that on there.
How old are you, Hunter? And I'm gonna let you go on this. How old are you?
I am 58, sir.
Okay, so you remember this. You remember this. Growing up in the 70s. So you remember this. They would say, and they said in the 60s as well, that we have to be twice as good as them, right?
And many of us have been.
Why did they say that? They said that because eliminate the excuses. You already know what it
Amen.
is. You already know what it
Amen.
is. Now go do it. And we were doing it. So
Amen. But Corey, you can't just dismiss the issues, undergirding issues that
so
cause so many of the others to not get there.
when I coach my football
Not,
team or my
not an
basketball
excuse.
team, when I
It's
coach my
not an
team,
excuse,
when I coach my team, football team or basketball team, and we go in at halftime, I'm not gonna say what they're doing. You ain't did
Corey.
this, that, and that's how we win.
Corey,
I've
it's not an
never seen a
excuse.
winner. I've never seen a winner unless he was taking advantage of someone with a victim mentality. I've never seen a winner complain about his opponent. Never.
But I'm not looking to give excuses. I'm just giving to point out reasons.
I get you. I'm not saying there are no actual legitimate reasons why a person might not succeed. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is the biggest reason is always going to be you. If if reason number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for you not succeeding or failing isn't you and you and you,
Yeah,
then
but if you're fighting for food, clothing, shelter, safety, and acceptance,
I got you.
it's hard to go across the street and look at a museum.
Well, don't go across don't go across to the museum. Go to the school. Go get it. Go pick up a.
Hard to do that too, Corey.
But listen, brother,
But
I got.
Let
appreciate you.
me just.
Go ahead, Arthur.
I've let you two black men talk. I've
Go
enjoyed
ahead.
it. I love
Here
it.
come
I
the
love
white
it.
man.
I
I'm
love it.
kidding. I'm kidding.
But let me just because there's a lot of crossovers,
Go ahead.
and things I can think about. First and foremost, I come from a culture. Armenians have had genocide committed against them.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1915, the Armenian genocide. As a matter of fact, the word genocide was coined as a result of the Armenian genocide of 1915, and that was a genocide predominantly against Christian Armenians, Christian Greeks, and Christian Assyrians by the Ottoman Empire. And so I know kind of cultural trauma. I understand it. I've seen it in me. My parents were born and raised, they're Armenians, but they were born and raised in Iran. We have an ancestry in Iran that goes back 400 years. Armenians were forcibly taken to Iran in the 1600s by the king of Iran. And then they migrated back to Armenia in the 80s, and I was born there. And we came to the United States. I got to the United States when I was 11 years old. We came to the United States not knowing the language, being in debt, and not knowing anything about how America functions and the way it is. Everything was a shock. And there's also the issue of my family moving from Iran to Armenia and living in communist Armenia. So this communist mentality. So like I think there's a cultural identity of sorts that should be the case. And I think you guys would both agree. Like I see this being an American issue because when you look at certain African cultures and they might be a lot more communal instead of individualistic, you can say some, family values, kind of what Corey's talking about, is elevated, which people live up to. Like even before I was a believer, because culturally it was expected of me, right? Let me just put it this way. People might freak out with this kind of language because it might sound old. I'm not even 40 years old. Let me put it that way. Okay. Growing up, there was an expectation that if I were to marry an Armenian woman, she was going to be a virgin. That was just a culturally accepted thing. Whether people did it or not is besides the point. Obviously, people are sinners and sinners will do sinful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they're sold as this expectation. And there's this aspect of shame if that's not the case that I grew up with. And maybe I'm seeing actually a transference in the younger Armenian generation where those values have kind of been lost to a certain extent. Even in a non-religious home, those values are lost. And I think America sort of does that. and it could result in various issues. So I lived up to that. I was like, no, like if that's what I want out of a woman, as a non-Christian, I was like, no, this is what I want. I want to be married. I want to have a family. And so when I became a Christian, obviously those things became a lot more solidified. So there is a combination of like working hard, but also everybody's going to have, generally speaking, things working against them. Like I had stuff working against me, but it was not as much as my older brothers. My oldest brother was 21 years old when we came to the United States. Learning the language was a lot easier for me than for my brother. So he had a lot of stuff going against him than I did because I was able to get educated and so on and so forth. But the cultural identity aspect, cultural expectations of one another, how often and how aggressive are their forces against us as minority groups, all affect that. Like what I'm trying to say is I think both of you guys are saying really, really good stuff. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And again, I'm saying this maybe for the folks that are watching. Mm-hmm. It could be, and it often is, a combination of a bunch of stuff that I think is being brought up. But on the other hand, I also say God's given us responsibility. We can say as men, God's given us responsibility, obviously, to live up and kind of get beyond that stuff. And frankly, as an immigrant into this country, I have been extremely privileged, as opposed to my counterparts in Armenia who never came to the United States, for me to advance in certain places in life that sadly to say they haven't been able to do so because the opportunities were not provided to them. Just my 2 cents on some of these issues.
Amen. So, Hunter, I got to let you go because I got so many folks behind, but
right, love you.
Love you too, brother. Listen, you can call back again. We can pick this up again next Friday.
Right,
Take care, brother.